He's facing more than 24 counts, including human trafficking and production of child pornography.
Joaquin Garcia was arrested in Los Angeles following an investigation into those alleged crimes. The type of crimes that belong nowhere in our society.
Bail for Garcia has been set at $50 million. Steve Clausen, California News.
Get Dad a great gift from Kohl's, like new Nikes, just $56.25, a Google Home, $79, or the Fitbit Charge 3, $119.99, and you'll get Kohl's Cash, $10 for every $50 spent. Plus, take $10 off your $50 or more Father's Day gift purchase, Thursday through Sunday at Kohl's. Select styles, 10 off 50 offer valid June 6th through 16th with promo code DAD10. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
They say that if you want to know a person, you should walk a mile in their shoes. Same thing goes for tires. Except Firestone knows it's not just 1 mile, it's many. With the industry-leading 90-day buy and try guarantee, you can test drive our tires for 90 days. Then if you're not fully satisfied with them, we'll refund or replace them for you. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Conditions apply. See FirestoneTire.com for details.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. A White House official is citing significant progress, but there's no deal yet in talks with Mexico over threatened tariffs. President Trump is threatening to impose tariffs unless Mexico stops the flow of illegal immigrants into the U.S. Despite today's progress, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said the president is ready to move forward with tariffs. President Trump is blasting House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and former special counsel Robert Mueller. He made the comments to Fox News host Laura Ingraham with hundreds of grave sites visible in the background.
He made such a fool out of himself the last time because what people don't report is the letter he had to do to straighten out his testimony, because his testimony was wrong. Nancy Pelosi doesn't talk about it. Nancy Pelosi's a disaster.
On the 75th anniversary of the massive Allied invasion of Normandy, Trump predicted that Democrats are in big trouble. The president offered condolences as a West Point cadet is dead and 22 others hurt after an armored transport truck flipped over.
Lieutenant General Darrell Williams, the superintendent of West Point, spoke with a heavy heart.
Today was a tragic day for the West Point community in our United States Army.
The cadets were being transported in an armored truck. An investigation will determine why and how it flipped over as soldiers were driving.
They were headed to land navigation training, being transferred to the training site, and that's when the vehicle had the accident.
He says it was in rough terrain. Of those hurt, all are expected to survive with injuries like facial cuts and broken bones. James Flippin, NBC News Radio, New York.
Apple is finally explaining how the switch from iTunes to 3 different apps is going to work. The tech company said no one will lose the content currently in their iTunes library. The switch will begin taking place this fall when the company releases its new operating system, Mac OS Catalina. Instead of iTunes, there will be 3 new applications: music, podcasts, and TV. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-298-8662. That's 800-298-8662. 800-298-8662.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this program on both Facebook and Instagram. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And brothers and sisters, Viewpoint with Father John is a listener-supported program. So you're the ones who keep us on the air every week. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give what you can. Also, I would like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children, and that we do not need any more self-improvement. Rather, we need self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most online bookstores. And if they don't carry it, tell them they should. And tonight we have a couple of things going on. I want to take time to acknowledge that this is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. You know, this is not a political left or right thing. We need to acknowledge our heroes. When you think about it, we would not have the freedoms we have today if it weren't for the sacrifices of both the brave men who died in war and the women who made it possible for them to do what they did by being the Rosie the Riveters and all the contributions that as a country we made to support each other during a very dark time in our world history. I'm hoping that once again we can start realizing that again we're Americans first and that we have a duty to love one another and to be a welcoming society because that's what we were founded on and what our greatest principles are. And if we don't stick to our greatest principles, which is charity, love, kindness, acceptance, and integrity, then we're going to lose the very good thing we have. It's up to us. And that's our co-creating with our Creator. And so I'm pretty sure God's not going to interfere when it's our job to make sure that we do things the right way. I'm sure God would be happy to guide us, but I think we've stopped listening for a little while. Because if we were listening, we'd be welcoming strangers. And a lot of you know how I feel about that. I'm very excited about my guest tonight. We have a very accomplished individual who has traveled the world and helped a lot of people. I can say in the thousands, maybe even more than that. But we Irish can't count higher than that, so we got to stick with what we can. And she is the author of the book, The Power of the Other Hand. It's Lucia Capacchione.
That's correct.
Hey, Elizabeth, if you're listening, you owe me $1. I said it right. Speaking of Elizabeth, as you know, Elizabeth is one of your proteges, and you've done very well training her. And she and I and Dr. John Smith on the 22nd are doing a workshop together in the People's Republic of Claremont. So I got that in, which will come with more information after our commercial break. But say hello to the people.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. I really enjoy this area. I've been here before, and the people have been very welcoming.
Well, I'm glad to have you. I'm very excited to have you here, particularly with your book, The Power of Your Other Hand, which for a dyslexic, you never know which one is really the other hand, and I'm dyslexic. But I'm sure this didn't come out of thin air, that there's a story to the story. Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind opening up a little bit, how'd you come about doing this?
Well, I was struggling with a life-threatening illness that doctors had been unable to adequately diagnose. They were kind of hit or miss. Try this medication, try that. They would even take samples out of their drawer from the salesman. So I was a little guinea pig for a summer, and it didn't work very well. I was getting sicker and sicker. At the same time, I started keeping a journal because I wasn't well enough to really do much. I was in bed all the time. And I had been an artist, so I had all these sketch pads hanging around, and I started writing and drawing in them and just getting my feelings out. And I want to just interject here that since then, that was 1973, in the 80s, Dr. James Pennybaker in Texas did research on the value of writing about trauma and crisis and illness.
Wow.
And he discovered that the immune system is strengthened by doing that, and also fewer doctor's visits after those writing sessions with control group studies. The people who wrote about trivia didn't get that result. So I want to interject that because that happened after I discovered that there was a therapeutic value of writing your feelings. I was writing my fear about my illness, about the pain, about the confusion, all of that. And at the end of that period, I shared my journals with a friend. She suggested therapy. And the therapist introduced me to my non-dominant hand.
Wow.
Meaning the hand that I don't normally write with.
Sure.
She was doing transactional analysis and introduced me to the whole concept of the inner child, which was news to me. And when I started printing with my non-dominant hand, my left hand in my case, I absolutely regressed and felt like a little kid.
Really?
And when I walked out of that first session with her, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Physically, I felt much better. And my recovery happened really quickly after that. Within 3 months of going into therapy and continuing with my journaling, I was back up out of bed working normally. And the non-dominant hand, however, even though she just introduced it as a technique to get me into my inner child, it turned out to be a lifesaver because when I was journaling, if my inner bully, my inner critic started working me over,
right,
my left hand would literally grab the pen and answer back.
Wow.
And I would feel this
powerful.
incredible inner shift happen. And I got to observe how I was criticizing myself. But my inner child knew that that was wrong, that that was toxic, and she wasn't having it. So she got really bratty and mouthy and sassy, and she just answered back.
I want to digress for just a second with something you just said that I think is very important. You used two words that I really want to take to task a little bit because I think they're important words. One was you said the little girl knew it was wrong, and then said it was toxic. And I really wanted to emphasize that because those are important things to know. If it's toxic, it's wrong.
That's right.
And a lot of people don't know that. They stick in situations that are really toxic, and they don't always equate that the toxicity is elevated with how wrong the situation is. And you can't make toxicity better by staying in toxic situations.
That's right.
So anyhow, I forgive me for interrupting you,
And
but I
that's
thought that
a
was
very
an
important point because I'll kind of recap the sequence was that I got well and I became an art therapist and I founded the field of journal therapy. 2 or 3 others and I, psychologists, did that. And a lot of people have asked me, because I teach them to write with their non-dominant hand, well, that critic you're talking about, isn't it good to have critical faculty, you know? And I said, well, there's 2 kinds of critic.
Yes.
I said, when I write a book and I'm looking for typos and spelling errors and garbled sentences, I have a critic that's an editor.
Right.
But that editor doesn't attack me.
Right.
All my editor does is say, oh, by the way, that sentence is pretty confusing. Well, but, there's a misspelled word here. But it's not telling me that I'm a terrible person and I'm stupid and I shouldn't even be trying to write a book.
And it's also trying to perfect a work.
That's right. So it's objectively oriented toward a goal.
Right.
And that kind of criticism is productive. It's good. But I use the word you just highlighted, toxic. If it feels toxic and you write it down, and I always tell people, write that criticism in the second person because you want to distance yourself. If you say, I'm stupid, I can't start a new business, I can't go back to school, I can't write a book, then you've identified with your inner bully. So I tell people with your dominant hand to write all that toxic stuff out so you get it out of your head and then let your inner brat answer back with your non-dominant hand because we carry in our bodies a lot of that anger and resentment at being put down when we were children.
Yes.
And then continuing to put ourselves down.
Yes, absolutely. You know, there's a story I use quite often when lecturing about people who grow up in abusive homes, what we now call dysfunctional. And it's a story of Clem. And it's called Clem's Heart. And you take a piece of paper in the shape of a heart, And it talks about little Clem as a child. He's in a home that has a lot of alcoholism and violence and such. And one day, his mother's walking around the house and opens his door. And as you know, Clem was like me as a kid. Room always a mess. And she yells at him, "Clem, how many times have I told you to clean your room? You're nothing but a slob. You think anyone's ever going to love you if you can't pick up after yourself?" Well, what Clem hears is, "I'm stupid, I'm no good, I'm unlovable." There tears a little piece of Clem's heart, goes back here. Weeks later, you know, I don't know about you, but I had a tendency to leave skates and skateboards out. And, well, Clem's father trips over one of Clem's skates. And so he screams, "Clem, you're trying to kill me, aren't you? Is that what you want? All you do is create trouble here. Why can't you just pick up your skates? Are you too stupid to pick up a skate?" So, again, another piece of Clem's heart goes back here. And what I'm building towards is all these things build up. And I won't go through the whole process, take way too long, but it goes into what you're talking about, that these messages are back here. And at some point, when these people are no longer talking to us, we still push the buttons to those voices that come up and continue the abuse on their behalf when they're not even around anymore.
That's exactly the phenomenon that I address in this book.
Right.
It's about peeling away the layers of all the emotions and they get stored in the body. There's no question about it. I did a workshop last weekend, and I had people write down their inner bully messages in the second person, you this, you that. And before I had them answer back with their non-dominant hand, I said, "Okay, stop now. I want you to silently read those words back to you, yourself, and I want you to tell me where you feel them in your body."
Wow.
And everybody in the room had a place in their body. "Oh, my back. Oh, my neck. Oh, my head. I'm getting a headache. Oh, I feel it in my heart. Oh, my lower back hurts." They literally somatized those messages. And that was just one reading. Imagine a whole lifetime of hearing that in the background, like music in the elevator, this little background voice.
Right.
24/7. So it affects the body for sure. And it affects the emotions because it really generates a lot of inner rage and anger if you're honest with yourself. But all that rage gets stuffed in the body from childhood on. And,
sure.
It's self-perpetuating because we keep telling ourselves the stuff that we heard from our parents or guardians or whoever was bullying us.
Well, the current thought of both medicine and psychology is that many children who survive traumatic childhood wind up with like fibromyalgia, other nerve-related illnesses because the nerve endings are frayed from all the adrenaline that's been pushed through them. So I agree with you 100%
Well,
on that.
Dr. Felitti in San Diego did research years ago showing, because he had this gigantic group of people to study, and they found exactly that individuals who had trauma and abuse in their childhood had a very, very high rate of chronic and life-threatening illnesses, and there's no accident. I mean, there's a real correlation, no question about it. Yeah.
Well, I believe it. Well, we're coming up to our first commercial break. I'm very excited for my guest this evening, the author of the book, The Power of the Other Hand, Lucia Capacchione.
Yeah.
Well, 2 out of 3 is not bad, you know. And you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
The Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands is serving up some really cool ice cream at La Micho Acana. Then get your chocolates and other delights from C's Candies. Moms and future moms who visit the mall can cool off and relax while they get treated like royalty at Shiny Nails or Francis Nails and then pampered at Texture Hair. The Tri-City Center is filled with retailers who care about you. Shop at the Tri-City Center in Redlands and see why they call it the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. A couple of shout-outs. I'd like to say hi to my old childhood friend, Tom, who's tuned in tonight. He's out there, I believe, in the Upland area. If he was cool as I was, he'd be in Claremont like I am, but he tried. Tom really tried. So, Tom, if you're listening, hello. Couple of things. I did want to tell you a little bit about this workshop coming up with Elizabeth Preston, Dr. John Smith, and myself. Is going to be on the 22nd at Elizabeth's Art Studio on Foothill. There is parking both in front and behind the studio. So you have both options. It's $35. It's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with a lunch break where there's eateries that you can go have a wonderful lunch. It's only $35 for all the goodness you're going to get. And I'm really excited about this because I've really hooked up with a couple of very talented and informed people. This is going to be a life-changing workshop. If you want to RSVP in advance, I would ask you to go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, go to the support button, click it, and in the memo put workshop. That will secure your seat because we could only open this up to about 20 people. It's going to be a very exciting day, and so I hope you'll tune in. And my guest this evening is really an accomplished individual, and been very excited to finally get to meet her because I've had one of her students on the show a few times, and I've learned through her students some wonderful things that really impressed me, so I was thrilled to have her on the show tonight. And she's the author of the book, The Power of the Other Hand, Lucia Capacchione.
Yep.
Capacchione, there we go.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I left a key out. I'm keyless. So we were talking when we left a little bit about how the critical talk would be, and you talked how we feel it in different parts of the body when we recite it, and that makes absolute sense. How did it help you in your ailment? Because you mentioned that the way you got started with this was you were in, the only way I could describe it is agony. Yeah. And really that isn't a big enough word. I don't know if there's one big enough for that.
I was in pain, but I was also very frightened.
Yes.
Because the doctors couldn't diagnose what I had correctly. I knew that they didn't really know what I had. And every time they'd give me a new medication, I'd have a side effect. Yeah. So I ended up going to a whole series of specialists dealing with these side effects who were giving me more medication, causing more side effects.
Yes.
So one day I got a call from the HMO's pharmacy, and they said, oh, that medicine we gave you, it's not your prescription. It got mixed up with somebody else's.
Goodness.
Don't take it. I said, well, it's too late. I already took it. I'm having an anxiety attack. I have a headache, and I'm dizzy, and I feel nauseous, and bad. So no, don't take it anymore. Well, I decided not even to go back anymore after that because I realized that this was a downward spiral I was in. And so I went into the bathroom and I took the lids off of all the medications in the shelf and I just threw them all out. And I went back to bed and I asked myself the question, what have I been doing that has felt good?
Right.
And the answer was drawing and writing in these sketchbooks you've got here. You always feel better after you do that.
Sure.
Writing your dreams out, drawing your feelings out. So I said, okay, I'm going to do what feels right and feels good. And I'm going to wait for some kind of spiritual guidance here to tell me what to do next.
Good.
That isn't it. But what I've been doing for myself is better. So I did that, and then I kept getting guidance into therapy, to alternative healers, and all kinds of people that supported my getting well. And it worked, and I'm still around and doing the work. This led into a career in art therapy.
Right.
But it also led to my being one of the founders of this journal therapy genre and expressive arts therapies using all the arts. And it's been an incredible journey for me. Led to lots of books, lots of trainings. And the mission I'm really concerned about now is training professionals to take this to children, to people who are ill. We've formed cancer support groups. We've been in public school systems, worked with high-risk kids on the border of Mexico, in our own community in Cambria as well. And it's been very rewarding to see how this approach to journaling, using the non-dominant hand to free up the emotions, to get in touch with the body, has been applicable to just about any group that we've taken it to.
I'm very interested in the at-risk kids.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about it, I just want to hold your book up a little bit so that people could see what the book looks like, those of you watching on YouTube and Ustream. So this is her book. I assume it's available on Amazon.
It is, yeah. And I've been doing book signings at Barnes & Noble, so they're carrying it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we have worked with in school districts where there's been a very high rate of domestic abuse, alcoholism, etc.
Okay.
And poverty. We were in the poorest school district in the urban areas of the United States in Mission, Texas, years ago. We had a 2-year program, and it was amazing. We did do a research project with the University of Texas, and when we brought journaling into the classroom for 1 semester, we had academic gains, we had behavior problems almost disappearing.
Wow.
And the third thing that was a surprise, we're talking about health, was that on testing day, there were no children in the nurse's office throwing up, having diarrhea and fevers.
Sure, anxiety
because
response.
there is absolutely an epidemic of stress-related symptoms among children and youth related to these standardized tests.
Sure.
And the nurse in the school district was the one that brought it to our attention. She said, it's testing day, there's nobody in my office. What's going on?
Yeah.
Is this connected to your program? And the representative for our program who was there said, well, yeah, probably. Because they've been drawing and writing about their fears about the test before the tests.
Right.
And that way they unloaded all of the stuff that was stuck in the body and in their emotions.
You know, that makes absolute sense to me. I did some of that, not with the journaling, but I did some work with a medical school for a little while, and also at a community college where we're doing stress reduction before tests. So that makes absolutely perfect sense to me that you would have those kind of results, because a lot of that would be from pent-up anxiety.
Yeah. We've also done a lot of work with cancer support groups. And we have one graduate of my training program who was quite advanced in cancer a few years back. And she was on this Caring Bridge online and sharing her own inner process about it. And at one point, she shared one of these dialogues that I talked about earlier, where her critic was saying, oh, what's all this kindergarten art you're doing in your journal? It's a waste of time. You know?
Oh, my goodness.
It doesn't mean anything. And she answered back. And when she shared that journal entry, I literally had a visceral reaction. And I heard this voice saying, well, there it is. She just turned her cancer around. Well, she did indeed turn her cancer around.
Wow.
She was at MD Anderson, I mean, heavily involved in chemo, and, you know, it was not looking real good in the beginning. And she turned it around. And I knew that that was the day it happened, because she got that critic off of her back, and she kept on keeping the journal, and she's written a book about it now.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think she's getting ready to publish it any time.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did it. I turned my condition. By the way, my condition was adequately and correctly diagnosed years later after I was healed by a doctor who developed something called sclerology, where they read the whites of the eyes He was also trained in iridology, it's an ancient Chinese method of diagnosis.
Okay.
And he met me, didn't know a thing about me, and literally told me my whole health history. And then he said to me, "What happened when you were 35? Did you come unglued?" And I said, "Yeah." That's the perfect way to describe it. And all my drawings in my journal at that time were bodies falling apart. And he said, "Well, you had a collagen disease. Collagen's the glue that holds everything together."
Right.
And he said, "So what did you do? Because you don't have it anymore, but I can see the traces of it." And I said, "Well, I kept a journal. I drew my feelings out, and I described what I do." He said, "Well, that was very smart, because if you had continued with medication, your immune system would have been completely wiped out."
Wow.
Because this is an autoimmune disease. And he said, "Yeah, whatever you did, it worked." And I said, "Well, that's what I do, and I'm going to keep doing it."
Yeah, as we say, if it works, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
it's interesting, because when he talked about collagen is the glue that holds everything together, up until that illness, for 5 years, I had been through one crisis after another. My parents had separated after 35 years. My marriage fell apart. My husband was my business partner, so that fell apart.
Wow.
Everything came apart. And so that metaphor was absolutely precise about what had happened in my body.
Yes.
So as without, so within. I was just mirroring in my body what was going on in my life. Yeah.
You know, you just named one of the chapters in my book.
Really?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all of a piece. And if we come to understand that, there's a lot that we can take care of inside. I have a chapter in the book about dialoguing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some amazing stories in there by people who turned relationships around by dialoguing with the other person and having the other person write through their own non-dominant hand. So they're writing all the words,
right?
But they're getting an insight into what really makes the other person tick in a way that the other person probably can't consciously explain.
That's pretty cool. Touch more on that a little bit. I think that's...
Well, I had a perfect case. I was doing some consulting in the Garvey School District, not too far from here. And we were putting one of these journal programs in place. And one of the teachers was very uncooperative. And she'd come to the staff meetings and trainings, and she'd sort of sit in the back and talk to her friends and giggle. And I honestly was getting very, very fed up with her. And so winter break came along, and I was beside myself. 3 months of that, I was like, all right, what am I going to do? Shall I go to the project director or the superintendent or the principal of the two schools that we're doing this federally funded program in, complain? But I thought, I'm going to do this journal exercise. So I started writing to her, and the way I do this is I tell the other person exactly how I feel, because they're not there. Their feelings aren't going to be hurt. And I told her, you're a real pain. You've just been disruptive, and you're troublesome in the workshops and blah, blah, blah. I just wrote all that. And then I put the pen in my other hand, and all of a sudden I saw her face. And for the first time, I saw an expression of fear.
Oh, wow.
Which I had never seen before. I'd always seen sort of belligerent attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this fear, and then I heard the words, and I started writing them. I'm afraid you're asking me to use a different method of teaching than I've used before, and I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake and look stupid.
Wow. That's great insight.
Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. Really, is that what this is all about? And so I did the dialogue, and then when I went back to school after the break, I parked in the parking lot, and she had an aide. She came out of the classroom, and for the first time since I'd started the project, she invited me into the classroom to observe her class doing journaling.
Wow.
I sat there, and she had children. This was in the 80s, Cambodian boat children.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of immigrant children, very poor, have been through, their villages had been burned down.
Sure.
So they're sharing their journal. I'm sitting in the corner crying. I mean, I was so moved by it. And at the recess, when they went out with the aide, I said, I have to talk to you. This is amazing work that you're doing.
Wow.
And I thought you weren't interested in the journaling, and that's why you didn't invite me in, because it was a voluntary program. Oh, no, I've been doing journaling. She said, at Christmas time, I went to the family home, and I found my journals, and I started looking at them, and I realized those journals saved my life in high school.
Wow.
I had a hard time as a teenager, and those saved my life. And I said, well, this is the best journal class I've ever seen, and if you don't mind, if the people from the county want to come and observe, would it be okay if they came to your class? Well, she just lit up. So we turned a situation that was very adversarial around by simply me looking at her with new glasses.
Yes.
I had a new perception. I saw a vulnerable person now, not somebody who had armor and was belligerent. I could see what was making her do what she was doing.
Right.
And I never told her about my journaling. She just was different. But I believe it's because I was different. I had taken the first step to change my perception of her.
That's funny, because there's a group of us that one of the practices we use, that if we have resentment with someone, we try praying for that person for 2 weeks at a time, praying that they would receive everything that we'd want for ourselves, all the goodness.
Yeah.
And even if we don't mean it,
right.
And then after a couple of weeks we find we mean it, and we see relationships change. It's like, why did that change? Well, because something in us changed.
There's another story in that book about a woman who had a lot of resentments against her father, and she did the same dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And after she was through, she saw his vulnerability. The next time she saw him, they said, I love you to each other for the first time in her memory.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So a lot of healing.
Oh, that's great. That shows the power that's in this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the real power in this, going to the non-dominant hand, is because of the fact you're able to access parts of the subconscious or unconscious.
Right. You're accessing the right brain, which has a direct link into the limbic system deep in the in the brain, which is the place where our emotions get stored.
That's true.
And it's interesting. There's no direct link from the left brain, which is the logical side of the brain. There's no direct link physiologically into that limbic system. So if you want to get in there, you've got to go through the right brain. And it doesn't matter whether you're right or left-handed.
Okay.
What I found, and I talked to Dr. Valerie Hunt at UCLA about this. She used to be head of kinesiology research there. She's since passed away. But I asked her, I said, why do left-handed people get the same results with this method? And she said, because when you went to school and learned to write, the hand you learned to write with got hardwired to your left brain. It had to, because you have to use the language centers there.
Right.
And it doesn't matter which hand it was, it got hardwired.
That makes sense. I'm processing everything you're saying right there, because, I had to study the brain and such, and so I'm going back to years ago and what they taught us in basic sciences, and so what you're saying, it's connecting with some old information.
So what this method does, using the non-dominant hand, it accesses emotions more directly than going through the left brain. It accesses the stored emotions, which we really, in therapy, that's where we want to go, right? And it also accesses intuition and spiritual attunement, not teachings that are, in any way handed down from anybody else, but a personal connection with divine presence.
Nice.
And people have that when they write with this non-dominant hand. It also gets them in touch with their bodies, because the right brain is where we process a lot of our sensory experience.
Right.
Visual spatial perception is a specialization of the right brain.
Sure.
So all of those factors, and that puts us in the unconscious as well, because the unconscious is often nonverbal.
That's true.
And so by using art and music and movement, we can get into the unconscious much more quickly and more truthfully, because that's the language of the unconscious. Dreams are not rational at all. You've got all these strange images and things that don't make sense in the ordinary use of that word.
Well, speaking of unconscious, Frank's looking at me through the glass that if I don't go to commercial, he's going to knock me unconscious in a minute. And so you're tuned into Viewpoint with Father John. We'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to say see you later, alligator, to embarrassing and troublesome issues with your skin, nails, and hair with all-natural Cayman alligator oil. Cayman oil is locally made, right in Louisiana, where people have been using alligator oil for centuries to treat all kinds of ailments. A drop a day of Cayman oil can help you say, see you later, alligator, to athlete's foot, nail fungus, acne, eczema, rashes, dry skin, cuts, infections, MRSA, scars, burns, sunburns, and even ingrown hair and dandruff. If you or someone you know is tired of suffering with any of these skin, nail, and hair troubles, you need to visit mycayman.com to learn more about 100% natural, non-toxic, hypoallergenic Cayman oil and get a bottle today. Say see you later, alligator, with Cayman alligator oil at mycayman.com. That's mycayman.com. mycayman.com.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. I want to say hello to all of our listeners around the world. I've been getting your little messages from, I shouldn't say little messages, you've been sending me some really neat messages from all around the world, and so I thank you that you tune in every week. And a quick shout out to our sound engineer, Frank. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Great. How are you, Father John?
I'm well. It looks like you ate some of those Oreos and you're in a sugar rush.
Just a little bit.
All right. Remember, sharing's caring. So
I wish I had some left to share.
Oh, see, that's it.
They're gone.
That glazed look in his eyes really is glaze. So
I had 3 donuts earlier too. So.
Oh, I'm going to start calling you.
Lots of glaze.
I'm going to start calling you Dr. Krispy Kreme. Well, tonight my guest is a really neat author, and we were talking during the break, and the more I discover about her, the more I like her, and I already liked her. So it's really fabulous stuff. She is the author of the book, The Power of the Other Hand. It's Lucia Capacchione. And before this night is over,
you're going to learn You're going to be fluent in Italian.
I will be Italiano. I'm going to tell you. They'll call me Ospargo. I can't tell the joke that goes with that. Anyhow, so I want to delve into another area. On the way out, we were talking a little bit about, and I'm going to loop it into what you're doing here because I think they do come together, that with some of the memory care places, they're using music therapy to help bring back memory, slow down the progression of memory loss. And I do believe there's some journaling stuff being used as well, if I'm correct. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes. My business partner, Dr. Marcia Marcia Nelson, that was her other name. Marcia Nelson has been working with the Kensington Place staff, residents, and with the families of the residents. And this is a very wonderful memory care center. And they are very forward-thinking to bring her in to do this journal work and movement, dancing on paper, scribbling, just loosening up, not having to accomplish anything, just being in the moment. And my experience in observing in various venues where I've worked with people who were having some memory issues is that the great thing about all these arts is it keeps you in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're simply in the present, watching the way the crayon is going onto the paper and what colors you want to use right now, you're not in the past or in the future. You're right in the present.
Correct.
And that's the place the children are in when they first start doing art.
Oh.
It's the same place. They are just in the moment. They want to see, well, what happens if what if I do this? Oh, the crayon breaks.
Right.
Or what if I put the crayon on its side and rub it like this on the paper? So they're right in the moment with physical, sensory experience. And it's really a change of pace because as adults, we're not there very often. But what I've noticed is that people that are having memory issues, if they can do something that just involves something right here in the present, we don't have to remember anything. We don't have to maneuver anything in the outer world. We're just dealing with this little reality right here. And I'm sure the same is true with music and with movement. So I know that all the expressive arts therapies are being used in memory care. And I think that we're going to see more and more research that explains why it works.
Sure.
As therapists and clinicians, we know it works, we see it. But science is going to come in like they did with the journal and therapeutic writing.
Right.
And they're going to say, oh, this is why it works.
Well, you said that when I was a young man, first in college, first studying psychology, I was selling microwave ovens in Montclair. And from what I was learning about people's response to music and stuff, I suggested to the store manager that we change the music we played in the store from this rock and roller stuff to soft classical or soft instrumental. And she says, why? I said, I bet you we sell more microwaves. And so she said, I doubt it. I said, okay, let's do a little experiment. We'll do both. And she was mad that I wound up being right because she wanted to be right about it. We changed it, and we sold more microwaves that day. People weren't rushing out of the store. They were very calm. Mm-hmm. They felt very relaxed. They took their time. They read each. It's funny because you can see them reading what was involved with this microwave, where usually they just look, and if there's no pictures, they don't want to know that much about it.
Well, there was research in plants in the 70s.
Okay.
And they exposed plants to Baroque music, jazz,
right, I remember this.
And acid rock.
Mm-hmm.
And the plants did not do well with the acid rock. They did fine with the soft jazz and with the classical music, especially Baroque. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, as an expressive arts therapist, that all of these things impact the nervous system.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And so when the nervous system is being fed and nurtured, it's going to change everything, your perceptions, the way you breathe, everything.
Absolutely.
So to me, using music is very important, and we use it in our when we do our journaling and workshops. I play very lovely Native American flute solo music.
Good.
I play music that's very soothing because I want people to do what you just said, slow down, give themselves the time. And it's almost like having an inner massage. When you have music that's nurturing and soothing,
yes,
it literally massages your whole inside. You just feel different if you stop and let it come in. And it really makes a difference.
I would believe that. I absolutely would. Like I said, some of the experiments I did just as a punk kid student, because I really liked what I was reading in the psychology books about it. And there's really something to it. Mm-hmm. And forgive me because I'm getting old now, but I remember that there was a study that they did in some employment situations where they experimented with different music to see what kind of production they got. And they found with the more gentle classical music that more work got done and there was less fatigue. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the problems we have in a lot of these restaurants you go into these days, and there's people who want to argue with me, but take a look at the results. When they're playing a lot of, like you go into some of these shops in the mall where they're playing the hardcore rock stuff, you come out irritated and agitated. And you don't spend a whole lot of time in the shop. Where if there's some soft music going on, it makes a difference. Just like when you're eating in a restaurant, the way you digest the food is actually managed a little bit with that music coming in.
That's right. Yeah.
And you can watch the different tables. If people are really getting irritated, your music's too loud.
Well, and I've noticed when we do drawing to different kinds of music, that when they're responding to music that's, real hard rock stuff,
right,
the drawing is always very jagged.
Yes.
Okay. So it's this kind of line, it's a very nervous line. When there's a more melodic or lyrical music on, everything starts going into circles and flowing, and it has this very lovely, continuous feel to it. And you can react to it just by watching somebody draw these different patterns and listening to the music. It makes a big difference.
And the different music has its different places for different things.
Yes.
But I don't suggest putting on, what's one that Jonathan likes so much? Bad Religion, or one of those really hardcore punk rock, metalhead songs, death metal. Right. Am I getting these right, Frank? And so,
well, you're correct. There's a place for all of that. If there's a party going on and people want to let off some steam, then some really upbeat music is going to probably do the trick. But when it comes to relaxing and really feeling nurtured, then you want to find something that really has literally a vibration about it that soothes the body, for sure.
Well, yeah, one of the things I do before going to bed quite often, or as I'm trying to get ready to go to bed, is I'll put on a little bit of soft music. I'll read something uplifting, but I have to take at least a half hour away from computers or anything else. Otherwise, my head's still working. And just for some of the listeners, the current scientific thought on this topic is you should not do anything on the computer 30 minutes before going to bed, because the blue light tells your brain it's time to wake up. So if you want the melatonin to work, which is the chemical in your brain that helps you sleep naturally, then you need to have that break. So just a little thought about that. You might try some of this journaling that our guest is talking about tonight. Would you recommend that for people who are trying to relax at night to sleep?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
I find, and a lot of my students and clients report to me, that simply drawing and scribbling to music and writing in the journal before they go to bed is very soothing. In other words, they can get off of their mind all the stuff that's running around in there, so they don't have to go to bed and have it running around and impeding their sleep. So it's a place to just dump it all.
Yeah.
Whatever you're worried about, it can wait till tomorrow. Dump it out on the page. If you're angry at somebody, just dump it out on the page. You don't need to carry it in your body. Just get rid of it. And you don't have to have it in your head either. Don't give it any headspace. So that's one of the therapeutic values, according to the research that Penny Baker did, was that you're dumping negativity, negative thoughts and feelings out, and you're not carrying them in the physical body. So that's a great value of that.
Yeah, and I'm also, anyone who knows me knows I'm a big practicer of every night writing a gratitude list before I go to bed.
Yes.
Minimum of 3 things I'm grateful for, and it can't be the same thing 2 days in a row.
Right.
And I found that helps, and there's been a lot of research on rewiring the brain with that. And I only mention that because it seems to go in with what you're talking about. Would you be okay if I read something that you showed me?
Yes, I would.
During the commercial break. I'm going to let you find it because you know your book better than I do.
Is it the beginning of that last chapter?
Yes, and I appreciate a book that has pictures in it because I relate better to that.
Yeah, the last chapter is called The Hand of God Within, and that is the non-dominant hand,
right,
which has a much easier time really tapping into inner wisdom. And this was a little piece that I wrote with my left hand when I was beginning that chapter.
Which is her non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
And the chapter is called The Hand of God Within. And this is the writing she got from her non-dominant hand. Truth is within you. It is never any farther away than your own beating heart. You don't have to think about it or go outside searching for it. You always contain it. I think that's such a prophetic statement and such a true statement. I'm going to say something that's really controversial, which I know will shock my listeners greatly. I truly believe that how you live is how you die. I learned that working hospice, and I believe we don't make peace in this plane, we will carry those emotions to the next plane, and we don't get out of it. We have to deal with it and get to clarification. It's not to punish, we have to resolve these things. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I led cancer support groups in the early 80s, and some of the members of our groups passed away. But the reports I got from their family and loved ones were that they died a beautiful, peaceful death because they had been working in their journals resolving a lot of unfinished emotional business.
Yes.
And all of those family members said the same thing to me. They said, he or she really died in peace, surrounded by loved ones. I mean, what could be better? But had found some kind of inner peace that I had never seen in them before. I heard it so many times. And they all ascribed it to the fact that they had been writing letters to people that they didn't even send. Sure. Or just, writing their appreciations, like you said.
Well, before we come to the end, we're in our last few minutes. A bluebird whispered in my ear, chirp, chirp, that you might have a book signing coming up on Saturday in the Republic of Montclair.
That'll be at Barnes & Noble in Montclair Plaza, yes.
Yes.
Saturday afternoon, and I hope people will come and join us. And I'll be signing books, and I'll be answering questions, and we're just there to interact and converse with people about some of the questions that they might have about this other hand that we have with us.
That's right. And for anyone who doesn't know where Montclair Plaza is, it's off the 10 freeway in between Central and Monte Vista. And I really recommend you go get your book signed. I got my book signed already. I don't know why you're waiting till Saturday, but you're going to have to wait till Saturday. So being that you didn't get one signed yet, I really want to recommend it. What time will you be there?
I'm sorry to say that I have spaced out on that, but they can call the store and find out.
I believe it's around 3 o'clock.
Yeah. I know it's in the afternoon because I have a workshop and we have to have lunch. So, it'll be in the afternoon. I'm glad you knew.
Yes. And so definitely show up. If I get a little bit of time, I'm going to try to stop by for a few minutes. So, but that's not to take away from what she's doing. I just want to stop by for a minute because of the fact I love what she's doing. And so, again, Lucia, thank you for being on the show. And, again, the book is The Power of Your Other Hand, available in bookstores and online. But show up Saturday at Barnes & Noble so you can meet this really dynamic author who has really been a way shower for many people and has brought a new way of getting in touch with our true selves. And speaking of true selves, that's a workshop that Elizabeth Preston, who has worked with Lucia, and Dr. John Smith and I will be talking about on the 22nd. And by the way, those two will be on the show next week. So we'll all be giving you some good stuff on that. And for those of you who've been supporting the program, thank you. And thank you again for tuning in another week with Viewpoint with Father John. If no one's told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. I look forward to our time next week. Be good and be with God.